Welcome to our webinar today on moving to XML with Julio Vazquez from...
has left the conference.
My name is Susan Lee, and I'm a marketing specialist at Justice Systems Canada. Before we begin, I'd like to go through a few housekeeping items. First, this webinar is being recorded right now and
has joined the conference
after the event is over. And also, if you have any questions during the webinar, please use the Q&A chat box on the right-hand side of the window. At this time, I'd like to pass the presentation over to Julio.
Hi, everybody. Good day. I won't try to figure out what time of day it is where you are because, as I understand it, we have a few hundred people, and who knows where you're all coming from. I'd like to welcome you, as Susan did, and just tell you a little bit about what's going to happen here. I'm not trying to tell you anything, but what I'm trying to do is help you and inform you on some of the things you have to consider, look at, act upon as you move forward to XML. I'm doing this based on experiences that I've gotten over the years, both in my previous career and my current career as an information architect. And to talk a little bit about my credentials, I am the Senior Information Architect of SDI Global Solutions.
Has joined the conference.
I've been in the business a little over 20 years. I have spoken at technical communications conferences, including DITA North America and Labicon. I am a structured authored advocate, so I give you that because this is something that I hold near to my heart. MindTouch last year, or this year, has named me as a top influencer, and I helped develop the DITA standard while I was at IBM. I am also the author of Practical DITA, which helps writers
has joined the conference
get a handle on DITA and XML and structured authoring. And what I'd like to do to begin is just get an idea of who you all are. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to start with a couple of phone questions to find out how much you think you know about XML and when you're considering moving to XML. The idea behind this is to just get some sort of concept of your level and what I should try to answer for you as we move forward in this presentation. There's a lot of things you're going to have to consider as you move down this path, and I want to make sure that I cover as much as I can. The other question, the second question, is one of urgency, and I want to get an idea of when you're considering moving, because the shorter the time period, the more you'll need in terms of resources. You might need help from vendors and contractors to get you to move forward. We've got about 7 seconds left here, and as soon as that's over, I'll share the results with you. So you all know
Jim K.
where we're at.
Has joined the conference.
And about 10 seconds, we'll show you what's going on. Okay, so let's see where we're at. We've got, about 125 people on the conference right now. And
has joined the conference.
Fairly evenly split between beginner and novice XML knowledge. There are some of you who aren't sure, so you didn't have an answer, and about 15 of you that are experts. The movement to XML seems to be evenly split in terms of immediate and 0 to 6 months. So some of you are kind of in a rush to get this information to move forward, and that's okay. And then there's some of you who aren't sure when you're going to move ahead. And that's okay, because the whole idea behind this presentation is to share knowledge.
Has joined the conference.
Not to make any judgments. All right. So let's take a look at some of the things that we have seen in the past in terms of the rationale for moving. a lot of organizations are in a desktop publishing model, and they found that that model is now starting to break its seams. They just can't do things the way they are because they have more volume and less people to do that volume of information development. The other thing is you hear the promise of XML in terms of the cost savings for writing and translation, and that is true. You can get significant cost savings, especially when you start reusing content. You found out that it's easier to reuse information from one set of publications to another, and that's a good thing. Some of you are looking to streamline the process that you've got to publish and create your information, and you also want to automate that publishing process, which is kind of difficult to do with some of the desktop publishing tools. So everything that you've heard or seen in terms of Rationale is achievable, and you can get some great benefit moving forward. Now, one thing you have to do is change your mindset and look at your information as a corporate asset. And this has been true all along.
Has joined the conference.
Have not considered the fact that the content can do things like affect your product release dates. Your customers and your potential customer perception can be changed depending on what they see in your content. If they see inconsistencies, if they see information that's not concise enough to meet their needs, that may affect their buying decisions and also their confidence in your product. The other thing that happens once you treat your information as an asset is the fact that you can actually manage your support costs a little better and maybe even drive them down. So these are some of the things that people look at and you should consider when you're looking to move forward. Here's a few things that you should consider moving down the path. Who are your consumers? And by consumers, I don't mean the end user of your product. I mean, who is actually going to need information and need it to be correct and consistent throughout? So when I talk about consumers, I'm not talking about just external customers, but internal customers, folks like marketing and sales, because you need to have one single source of truth, and you don't want information to be passing from hand to hand to hand to hand. It's kind of like when you were younger and you played the game of telephone. You'd start with a message at one end of the chain, and by the time it got to the end of the chain, that message would be totally incomprehensible, or
has left the conference.
At best case, it wouldn't be as accurate as it was when it started. The other things you've got to take a look at is this is a process change. So you need to make sure that everybody kind of adheres to the process that you're about to implement, and they work hard and diligently to make it successful. You also have to manage this as a project, because that's what it is. It's truly a project. You have to identify the resources you're going to need. Do you have enough resources to meet your schedules and your volumes? If not, you may have to do things like consider
has left the conference.
You need to manage the project from the first day all the way out. Consider things like creating a pilot project so you can show success and show what the future will bring, and then move it out to the rest of the organization later. How do you absorb the startup cost? Because the bottom line is when you move to XML, there is a cost, okay? And that cost you'll recover, but it's something that you're going to have to absorb. Do you allocate that cost from your already strained resources, or do you temporarily acquisition that cost in resources or any other ways? You may need to do some things like temporarily purchase skills from vendors, all right? Make sure you understand what the return on investment is and the timing of the return on investment. If you cannot communicate accurately when your break-even point is and when you start getting back what you put in and more, people are going to have expectations, and we'll talk more about that later on. Another thing you need to consider is, as you move forward, how are you going to store all your source content? Is it going to be on network drives or servers, or are you going to need a CCMS? You may not initially, but you may want to think about these investments and how you're going to roll those out and make them, make them part of your plan. Okay? So what we're going to do now is we're going to start another poll, and this poll I'm going to try to find out where you think your processes are right now. Okay? Because we want to understand, if you know where your content is, how it gets from point A to point B, including your customers, your final customers, and try to get a handle on your processes, because you want to be able to understand where you need to make improvements, where the gap is. You may be surprised to find out that there's actually very little that you need to change, or you may find out that there's a lot to change. So we got about 10 seconds for you all to submit your final responses, and then we will show you the results. Okay? And let's see. About 60% of you know your processes well or extremely well, which is good, because you need to get a handle on it. If your processes look like a jigsaw puzzle, you're going to have a lot of work to do, because you have to get things to align, and you've got to put all those pieces together. The other thing is that if your processes look sort of like silos and you have no communication between groups, you're going to have to figure out how to work that and improve on that. Where you want to get with your process is something similar to the cycle at the bottom of this slide, where you take information from requirements and planning all the way through to publishing. And
Winston has joined the conference.
Never-ending cycle of requirements, writing, editing, reviewing, and approval, and finally publish. And you want to evolve to that structure from these other structures if you can. Okay? So one more poll question that I'd like to do with you all is to try to understand things like your information flow. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to open this poll now and have you take a look at your information flow throughout the organizations. Who uses your content? Okay? And how much inconsistency or error do you see? This is important to understand so you know how things exist in your current environment and how you need to handle it in the future. We've got about half of you responding so far. Got about another 30 or 40 seconds to address the question. While you're doing that, I'll take a sip of water. What we're going to do after we take a look at this poll question is take a look at information flow and see how it compares in your experience to what I've seen and heard in the past. So in about 5 seconds or so, I'll share with you the poll results so we can see where everybody thinks everything is. So how well do you understand your information flow throughout your organization? And again, you have almost 70% of you know how your information flows either well or extremely well. And the other 40% or so either don't have an idea or don't think it's very good. And as far as the inconsistencies, most of you are doing fairly well. You're under 20% inconsistency or error in documentation, which is good, because once you get over 30%, you've got a serious problem, and your customers and your clients will have issues with your content. So let's take a look at the information flow. What you want to understand is how information gets from point A to point B, beginning with your subject matter experts all the way out to your customer. Is it something that's so out of control it kind of looks like a blog? It just goes anywhere it can, and there's no real understanding of where something came from and where it's going. Or does it kind of rain down on everybody, overwhelming them, which is something you really don't want? Or does it just kind of get there any way it can, sort of like a flowing river, and it lays its way downstream, and eventually people get what they need, but they don't get it in time or in the format that they need? Or is it even worse and look something like this wall? Any of these information flows that are not crisply defined, and you have a process that designs it, it's going to cost you money. And it's going to cost you real dollars one way or the other. Either in extended effort to get your information out to your customer, or in customer satisfaction or confidence. Another thing that you want to be aware of is that you're going to get the, well, if it ain't broke, why fix it response from people as you move forward. So, the fact that they've been doing things successfully, or what they believe is successfully over the past, 10, 15 years, is going to put up roadblocks for you to move forward. You're going to have to do a bit of selling to try to overcome it, because those successes are actually going to blind people to the improvements and what can happen in an XML environment. Another thing that occurs, and this is quite natural, is humans don't like change. We resist change because we like to be comfortable. All right? And our first impulse to any change is to say no. It's not necessarily a healthy thing, but it's also not a bad thing. So you're going to have to really call upon all your change management skills to try to pull things together. And there's a website at the bottom of the slide that will help you take a look at your change management processes and try to firm them up if you need to. But you can get over this national resistance as long as you help people understand why things are and why they're doing things. Because what are we doing? We're actually trying to refine a process here. We're trying to make things better. You're taking a look at the gap between where you are today and your ideal process. And it's your process. It's nobody else's. So you need to define it for yourself and have people help you implement it if needs be. Prioritize what you're going to do and the order you're going to do it in. You don't want to try to bite off more than you can chew initially, because it'll cause you issues. People will have problems with it.
Winston has left the conference.
All right. You want to make sure your new processes will help everyone collaborate, because collaboration is going to improve your information product in the long run. Get buy-in for all the changes that you're proposing from all the stakeholders.
Has left the conference.
Okay, and you want to make sure that your workflow and your new processes mesh. You don't want to be changing the
has left the conference
view of the world, but you want to evolve into the new paradigm.
Has left the conference.
You have an information roadmap, and you have to actually communicate that roadmap to everybody involved, and communicate it crisply and clearly, so everybody knows where and when things are going to occur during the project. Okay. This is not an exhaustive list, but it is a list of some of the people who have to be influenced. You have to talk to the writers and the editors and other folks like sales and marketing to get them all on board to understand where the project is going and how this is going to improve the information flow from your subject matter experts all the way out to the customers. Another thing to keep in mind is that you have to manage your expectations.
Jim K.
People will have certain expectations of the project.
Has left the conference.
And you need to make sure that those expectations and the reality mesh. Because if they don't, you're going to also run into some obstacles. Because people will expect much more than you can
Has left the conference.
And you don't want that to happen because it actually calls for failures. Right. So you have to manage and match the process benefits to their expectations and to the return on investment so people understand how the two things go together. There will be doubts as you progress, but you can talk to those doubts and try to mitigate any of the issues that come up by reminding people what the gap was from your gap analysis and to match it to the benefits and the ROI. Nothing is free. When you're looking at this whole move, you're going to have to absorb a cost. And again, you may need to do things like temporarily augment your staff to meet the needs of the project without breaking the budget. And again, the ROI question becomes relevant when you start talking about the budget. Okay, but you know that you're going to recover some of those costs down the line, and you have to be able to predict accurately when that's going to occur. Again, look at this in terms of phases. The first phase will be where the largest effort may come into play, and then look at the second and third phase. So you start with a pilot project so you keep your costs predictable, and then you can extract from that data what the overall move is going to run. Earlier I mentioned that it might be beneficial to implement a CCMS as part of the overall process. You're not looking at a document management system. They are not the same. Document management systems do not give you the kind of control over the pieces of the content that you'll need for reuse and for control of the final published output. So, to really support a structured authoring model well, you need to have a CCMS. You can temporarily use other objects, but in the long run, it makes sense to have a CCMS down the line if you don't do it on day one. Some of the things you want to look at when you're looking at component content management systems are these items: access control. How does people get to the content, and what keeps one person from overwriting another person's information? You want a component content management system that actually leverages whatever features exist in your XML schema, whether that be DITA or something you grow on your own. You want it to interface well with all your other processing tools, but all the things that support the editing, the translation, the publishing, and the reviewing. Things that don't support all those actions are going to cause you more headaches than they're worth. You also want to be able to create any sort of reports that you might even consider. You want to be able to take a look at where a project is at a particular point in time. Those kinds of reports are important for your process as you move on. You also want to take a look at your publishing requirements. One of the things that I like to try to get to when you pull a system like this together is something that's simple to initiate on the publishing end. You want it centralized so that you have control over the style, and so when you want to introduce changes to styles, it's easy to do. If possible, a system that schedules the publish if you need that. You definitely want something that's scalable, that can handle multiple requests, even if it has to queue those up. Again,
has joined the conference.
You need something that's customizable, and so you can implement your own style, and you can model your workflow to it. This is a key point, training. People work better and they won't resist you as much, they won't resist you as much if they understand the why and the wherefore. If you can't tell a person why you're doing something, they're going to put up a wall. They're going to make it difficult, and they're going to have more objections. It can set your project back months if you don't have sufficient training on all the tools involved in your move, in the process, and in the rationale behind moving the process. Vendors can help you with this, but you want to make sure that the vendor that's doing your training is teaching to your model. It should be your workflow, your processes, and not something that's generic or vanilla. You don't want something that is one size fits all. You want something that meets your particular model. So the bottom line here, some of the things you have to do moving forward with XML is you need to look at all your current processes, understand them, take a look at the good, the bad, the ugly. What do you keep? What do you need to change? What do you need to throw out? Take a look at the strengths and weaknesses. Keep those strengths. Figure out how to improve the weaknesses. Look at how your information flows throughout your organization, where the intersects are, where the disconnects are. Get everything flowing in an orderly, planned method. When you do move, make sure you have planned this project from nuts to bolts, beginning to end. Start with a pilot. Show the success. Then implement a piece at a time the move, and make sure people are trained well as they're going forward. Make sure they understand the requirements, and test as you go on. Make sure that you're getting out of the system and out of the processes everything you expect, and track it all. Okay? If you don't track, you won't be able to see what's gone right, what's gone wrong, and what you need to adjust as you move forward. All right? So, make sure you have some metrics in place, and you take those metrics and you use them successfully to move forward. And with that, what I'd like to say is, are there any questions?
Hello, everyone. Thank you for attending our webinar today. We currently don't have any questions, Julio, in the Q&A chat box. So if anybody does have any questions, please put it through the Q&A chat box, and we'll answer them as soon as we get them. So I have a question that just came in. What structured authoring tools do you recommend, and why, Julio?
Well, I have used a number of structured authoring tools, and you have to keep in mind that one of our sponsors makes a structured authoring tool, and that's XML. I've used XML, I've used Oxygen. It really depends on what you're trying to achieve. I've also used Arbortext. I tend to lean on one because I do a lot more than just authoring. I do a lot of XSL style sheet development and other XML modeling. So I'm going to be diplomatic and bypass answering that directly, saying that there are many tools out there. They're all very good, and you have to pick the one that fits your needs the most.
Okay, thank you, Julio.
Has left the conference.
I don't have any other questions that came in. Maybe we can wait a couple of minutes and see if anybody else has any questions.
Yes, one thing I think I forgot to mention up front was that I wasn't trying to sell anything.
The next question I have is it possible to use SharePoint 2010 for content management?
SharePoint 2010. If you're talking about pure XML management, SharePoint 2010 will fall short unless you do a lot of customization to it. I know that Suite Solutions did put together something that would actually handle, for example, DITA. They expended a lot of effort to do that. SharePoint was designed, and I don't think its design has changed dramatically, to handle documents more than components. So if you try to drill deeper than a document, it starts to show some problems, and you need to have a lot of customizations to make it work to that level.
Great, thank you, Julio. If anybody has any last-minute questions.
Has left the conference.
If anybody has any last-minute questions, please use the Q&A chat box. I'd also like to thank everybody for their patience during the webinar, because I know that there's been a little audio glitch with people entering the audio conference via teleconference. And thank you so much for just hanging on and listening and through all the interruptions.
Has left the conference.
My next question that I have is, what benefits can be quantified in terms of dollars?
In terms of dollars, well, you take a look at things such
has left the conference.
The cost of just volumes of content. I've seen studies where groups have taken their content and they've been able to produce the same amount of volume with anywhere between 20 and 50% less source. So, you start out with what's a relatively cheap savings, which is the storage devices, and then you take a look at, well, we also now have translation costs that are less because we're reusing more content. We may even cut our writing costs somewhat because we are reusing more content. So you can see some benefits, and I'm not saying that this is something that you'll see immediately, but you may see some benefits in terms of translation costs
has
going
left
down,
the conference.
volume of storage space going down. You may also see, again, the cost in terms of writing and editing going down. The other thing that you'll see, especially with structured authoring, is that your review costs and your review benefits will change. Your review costs will go down because people aren't looking at full documents. They only need to look at what's changed, what's new, in the context of the piece that they're responsible for, rather than wading through, let's say, a PDF. So that will be a benefit to you, and it could actually improve your cycle times.
The next question I have is, my data is now in SGML. What types of errors can I expect when converting to XML?
What kind of errors? Well, since SGML is actually a superset of XML, the errors depend on what XML you're going to. You can fairly much automate most of that. Some of the things that you're going to run into is entities, phrase entities, and things of that nature. You'll need to probably rework. Again, how good a schema did your SGML have, and will it translate into your target XML effectively? So the answer there is it depends on how good the structure was when you started. It's kind of like you could do structured authoring in Word if you needed to, but when you go to XML, will it translate? Well, it depends on how rigorously people follow the template that you originally set up.
And the next question I have is, what would you say is the biggest challenge in switching to XML?
I think the biggest challenge is with authors, and again, this is because of the way they've been trained. They've been trained to think in terms of documents and ownership of a document. So coming down to authoring topics and pieces of documents and collaborating with each other and communicating more to get things to work together, that's probably the biggest challenge. So it's more of how do you get the process described well enough so that you get people collaborating well and communicating more and shaking that this is my document ownership thought. Once they get over that and they understand the benefits of the collaboration and the reuse, it actually becomes a joy for them.
What tools would you recommend for creating HL7 compliant XML?
I'm sorry, can you repeat the question?
What tools would you recommend for creating an HL7 compliant XML?
HL7 compliant XML? Well, believe it or not, I think that questioner has me stumped right now. Because that's the first time I've heard that term, HL7. Let me see if I can look that up very quickly. Okay, health level 7 XML. Again, if you have something that's flexible in terms of understanding a schema, those tools will work well. Anything that is driven from schemas or DTDs that can read them and validate against the HL7 XML schema would be the tool to use. And I would say that most of the authoring tools that exist out there today do that and do it well.
Thank you. So the next question I have is, my team is moving out of unstructured frame maker. What is the best next steps? A move to structured authoring or a move to authoring where we can import our existing frame files and move on from there?
That's a great question. It's probably better to get people thinking in terms of structured authoring first. There are tools that will take unstructured frame and give you an XML document out of it, but because unstructured frame, you're looking at formatting more than you're looking at semantics, it's kind of difficult to get that to translate 100% well. That said, you can get from there using a tool like Mr.Go, for example. You can get from unstructured frame to something that approaches a structure, but you will have to manually do some rework to get things to a state that makes sense in XML.
Great, thanks, Julio. And that's all the questions I had.
Okay, either I did a really good job or I lost everybody. Well, one thing I'd like to say is that, this move is not necessarily scary, and there are people out there who can help. We can help you at SDI if you need to look at your processes and analyze them and try to get a plan to move forward. When it comes to tools, converting data or authoring tools, you've got DCL that sponsored this webinar, and you also have Just Systems that sponsored this webinar. Both make good tools, and they can help you get from point A to point B. And that's the extent of my sales.
Thank you very much, Julio.
I want to thank everybody for taking the time out of their
Has
day
left the conference.
To the webinar. And I hope you enjoyed it and you got something from it.
Linda?
Has left the conference.
Okay, so back over to you, Susan.
Great. Thank
Has
you.
left the conference.
Thank you, Julio, and thank you, everybody, again, for your patience during this webinar. I know that we experienced a few audio glitches and, interruptions during the webinar, so thank you for staying on with us and, listening to Julio's presentation, asking wonderful questions, and hope you can join us for our next webinar and have
Has left the conference.
Bye, everybody.
Has left the conference.